Mitsubishi G4M Betty, the bomber built to burn. If you've ever wondered how one airplane could terrify navies, outrun common sense, and still go down in flames with a handful of hits, this is the story. Stay with me, because the final minutes will flip what you think you know about good design in war. Picture this: Clark Air Base, Luzon, the Philippines. The fighting has rolled past, the heat shimmers over cracked concrete, and a single Japanese bomber sits there, intact, not crashed, not scavenged, just left. Its olive skin gleams like a polished cigar left on a giant ashtray, resting on conventional tail wheel landing gear. 20 meters from nose to tail, 25 meters of wingtip to wingtip, twin 14-cylinder radials idle silent now, but built to push each nacelle to roughly 1,500 horsepower. The tail number reads 763-12. The man with the camera is Major Frank T. McCoy, the commander of a technical air intelligence unit. He's seen wrecks, plenty of them, burned out. Shells in jungles and on beaches, but nothing like this. He circles, he photographs, he hesitates. Then he crouches by a wing inspection panel and climbs inside. No armor, no self-sealing, no fire suppression, not even a protective coating, just thin aluminum, about 2 millimeters, between thousands of liters of high-octane fuel and the kind of bullets Allied fighters throw all day. If you're thinking, that can't be standard, you're not alone. McCoy isn't just shocked. He's looking at an equation in metal, speed and reach purchased with risk and flame. The Betty didn't forget protection. It threw it overboard. We'll prove it. But first, roll the clock back 4 years. Morning haze over the Philippines, December 8, 1941. While smoke still rises over Pearl Harbor, 82 Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers and 26 older G3M Nell bombers lift from Formosa, their target, Clark Field, the primary American air base in the Philippines. It's noon when they arrive, 20,000 feet up, beyond the bite of most anti-aircraft guns. 27 Bettys in the first wave. 600-plus bombs fall across runways, hangars, fuel, and hope. Then Zero fighters rake treetop high. Fast, precise, merciless. 17 B-17s are on the ground. 12 don't make it out. P-40 Warhawks sit on the apron and become bonfires. In 3/4 of an hour, American air power in the Philippines is rubble. A lone lieutenant, one of the few who lives to write, describes perfect formations sweeping in, untouchable, then fighters dropping like hawks. Not a single Betty is bagged over the field. The sky they leave behind is quiet, and it's theirs. How did they do that? Distance. Those Bettys launched roughly 460 miles away and struck with impunity. At the war's start, that reach felt like science fiction. Suddenly, bases that seemed safe were within range. The G4M didn't just fly far. It redrew the map. 2 days later, the world learns what long-range strike really means. December 10th, 1941, British Force Z, centered on the battleship HMS Prince of Wales and battlecruiser HMS Repulse, is patrolling off Malaya. Japan sends coordinated waves of Bettys and Nells, carrying Type 91 torpedoes, about 840 kilograms each with a roughly 205-kilogram warhead. Engineered for shallow water so they don't dive under targets. They run straight, true, and lethal. Torpedoes smash into Prince of Wales. At least 6 hits, plus bombs from level bombers. Compartments flood, damage control can't keep up, and the list grows desperate. Repulse tries to dodge, takes 4 or more, and finally rolls. From first contact to sinking? Under 2 hours. Prince of Wales goes down around 13:20. Repulse follows just after 13:30. 841 British sailors die. And for the first time in history, capital ships defending themselves in open ocean are destroyed by aircraft alone. In early 1942, Bettys are everywhere. They hit Darwin from distant bases, showing reach that Allied commanders keep underestimating. They punch across New Guinea's mountains toward Port Moresby. They lash Guadalcanal from Rabaul, about 600 miles across a sea Allied fighters can't cross, and still have fuel to fight. It feels unfair. When you can't reach the bomber, you can't stop the bomber. The G4M becomes the icon of Japanese air power's long arm. But I promised you a twist. The reason the Betty can hit so far isn't magic. It's math, and the math demands a price. Back to the late 1930s. The Imperial Japanese Navy writes a wish list in 1937 that looks impossible for the time. A land-based bomber fast for its class, on the order of 398 kilometers per hour in early requirements, cruising comfortably at about 3,000 meters, and able to fly roughly 4,700 kilometers empty, or about 3,700 kilometers with an 800-kilogram bomb or torpedo load. No country has anything like it in service. Even the newest American designs don't reach that far. At Mitsubishi, engineer Kiro Hanjo takes the brief. He studied at Junkers in Germany, knows the state of the art, and starts doing the brutal arithmetic. Fuel is heavy, around 0.8 kilograms per liter. To meet the Navy's range, the airplane will carry roughly 4,780 liters in its early model, about 3.8 metric tons of fuel at full load. Every kilogram you add elsewhere, armor, self-sealing, redundant plumbing, robs range, or payload. The trade-off is merciless, so the team does the unthinkable by Western standards. They cut protection to the bone. Self-sealing tanks? No. Armor plate around fuel? No. Built-in fire suppression? Not beyond basic handhelds. Even coatings that slow leakage? Off the payoff. A remarkably light, empty weight for a bomber this size, around 6,741 kilograms for early versions, and a maximum takeoff weight near 9,500 kilograms. Top speed? On the order of 428 kilometers per hour for the Model 1. Service ceiling? About 8,500 meters. Crew of 7. And that headline range? Over 6,000 kilometers in ideal conditions, a figure that makes planners in every capital sit up straight. In April 1941, the first G4M Model 1s reach units. By December, roughly 180 are available. They deliver exactly what the spec sheet promised. In the special conditions of early 1942, when Allied fighter coverage is thin, radar networks are fragile, and surprises still happen, the Betty is devastating. It can strike what you thought you couldn't lose, from places you thought you didn't need to defend. Its speed gets it in, its range gets it out, and on paper, the numbers dazzle. In practice, physics waits in the wings. Let's talk fuel placement. To cram that much fuel into an airframe this light, designers put 8 tanks, 4 per wing, through the thick center sections where wing meets fuselage. Aerodynamically, that's efficient and structurally sound. Tactically, it's a bullseye. Attacks from the side or below are likely to pass right through the tanks, and without self-sealing rubber layers to swell shut around holes. Even small caliber hits become a pressurized spray of flammable mist. Add tracers and cannon shells to the equation, and you don't just leak, you ignite. Yet in 1942, you wouldn't know it from the results, because when no one can intercept you, your vulnerabilities don't get tested. When no one can reach you, you dictate the fight. Until someone can. As American production ramps, a new generation of fighters, better trained pilots and Wildcats at first, then Hellcats and Corsairs, shows up with tactics sharpened by blood and experience. Radar coverage improves, intercepts become routine, and pilots start reporting something odd about the Betty. You don't have to aim for the cockpit or engine. Hit almost anywhere along the wings or fuselage, and the airplane erupts. Flying Cigar, one-shot lighter. Flying Zippo, the nicknames spread cruel and specific. By mid-1942, the G4M's aura of invulnerability evaporates. The battlefield that favored range now favors resilience. The skies get crowded with Allied fighters where it matters. When it matters, Betty crews begin to notice a pattern. Missions that return bring home untouched airplanes. Missions that get hit rarely bring home anything at all. This is where our story tightens. On August 8, 1942, 23 G4Ms from the 4th Air Group depart Rabaul for Guadalcanal, American fighters. Catch them near Savo Island. In the short, violent minutes that follow, 18 Bettys fall. Roughly 120 airmen die. It's the worst single lost day for the type in that campaign, and it won't be the last bloody tally. The rest of August becomes a rhythm of launches from Rabaul, long overwater hauls, interceptions, and burning wreckage. September repeats it. October compounds it. By November, more than 100 G4Ms have been lost in that theater alone, with hundreds of crewmen gone. The exchange isn't just bad, it's unsustainable. Now step back and remember the captured aircraft at Clark. The wing cavities like aluminum bathtubs, the Great Lakes of fuel, the missing rubber, the missing armor, the missing systems that turn hits into leaks instead of infernos. What shocked Major McCoy wasn't a mistake. It was policy, pure and simple, etched into rivets and tubing. This is the part where I want you to weigh in. Was that choice brilliant for 1937 or reckless by any era's standard? Drop your take in the comments and tell me. If you were designing for an empire spread over the world's largest ocean, would you accept that risk? Because the consequences reached far beyond one airplane or one mission. American bombers of the same era, B-17s, B-24s, even twin-engine B-25s, paid a heavyweight penalty for survivability. Their empty weights climb into different brackets, and they haul steel plates, armored glass, and thick self-sealing compounds around each tank. Those layers swell. When fuel touches them, choking bullet holes, it isn't glamorous and it isn't free. It costs speed, altitude, and climb. But when the shooting starts, those kilos buy time, and time is survival. The Betty's designers knew all of this. They ran the math. They chose reach. In the early war, that reach looked like genius. In the long war, it looked like a trap. And the trap closes most brutally when intelligence and interception intersect with vulnerability. In a moment, we'll ride along on an water ambush that kills the architect of Pearl Harbor, and we'll watch a squadron of American P-38s hit in arrival time within 60 seconds after flying hundreds of miles at wavetop height. We'll also see how Japan tried, too late, to bandage the Betty's fuel system with rubber sheets that slowed leaks but couldn't stop fire, and a late-war Model 3 with true self-sealing tanks that sacrificed the very range the Navy had worshipped from the start. Before we go there, keep this in mind: technology doesn't fight in a vacuum. It fights the enemy you actually have, under the conditions you actually face, for longer than you planned. The Betty was perfectly optimized for a short, surprising war. The Pacific didn't cooperate. So here's where our investigation turns from legend to laboratory. Engineers and allied technical air intelligence units start tearing into captured airframes, beginning with damaged birds at Buna in late 1942 and culminating in that pristine 763-12 at Clark in January 1945. They measure tank placement. They weigh the rubber that isn't there. They calculate the 500 kilograms or more saved by skipping self-sealing, armor, and plumbing. And then they run the numbers forward. How many more liters of fuel does that weight buy? How much farther does that push the radius? How many interceptors can you now outrun by simply not needing to come close? Their memos read like autopsy reports and design reviews at once. Catastrophic critical point becomes a phrase on paper. One system whose failure guarantees loss of the aircraft. They map bullet paths through wing routes and see the same outcome, again and again. But raw stats never tell the full story. People do. Imagine being a Betty crewman in 1942. The airplane is fast, clean, and deceptively simple to fly. You strap in, believing range is safety. You fly across an ocean. You deliver the hit. And if you were lucky enough to avoid fighters, you bring the airplane home. The machine keeps its promise when you're untouched. Now imagine 1943. The same cockpit, the same checklist, the same ocean. But the radio crackles with warnings. Radar reports pile up. You hear the engine note of fighters long before you see them. And suddenly, range as safety flips to range as exposure. Because every extra mile you can fly is another mile you can be found. By spring 1943, Japanese engineers experiment with quick fixes. They lay 30mm rubber sheets under wing skins in production after a certain airframe number. The speed penalty is small, about 9 kilometers per hour. The range loss is measurable, roughly 300 kilometers. But the survivability gain? Disappointingly small. Rubber sheets slow leaks from small rounds. They don't smother vapor or stop fires from cannon hits. The fundamental weakness remains. A more serious fix. The Model 3 with real self-sealing tanks arrives in late 1944. It works as advertised in tests. Tanks swell shut, leaks clamp down, and survivability improves. But the price is the very thing that made the G4M a legend: range. Capacity drops to make room for the sealing layers, and maximum reach tumbles by more than 2,000 kilometers compared to the original long-legged Model 1, depending on load and conditions. Only a few dozen Model 3s are built before the war ends. They are too late to matter against radar, CAPs, and carrier groups that now own the sky by day. Which brings us back to one of the most precise interceptions in history. Signals intelligence cracks a schedule, calculates a path, and hands a small formation of P-38 Lightnings a task that sounds impossible: fly hundreds of miles at wavetop height, break radio silence, and appear at an invisible point in the sky within a window counted in minutes. They do it with a margin of a single minute to spare, and they find two Bettys carrying an admiral whose name is woven into the war's opening blow. What happens next will make you rethink how vulnerability shapes strategy, and why the Betty's most famous kill is also proof of its fatal design. Stay with me. They called the mission impossible. Fly out over empty ocean at wavetop height, keep radios quiet, and arrive at a speck of sky at an exact moment. Because if you're early, you miss him, and if you're late, he's already gone. But the plan wasn't to meet a plane. It was to meet a man. American codebreakers had read the schedule. The architect of the Pearl Harbor strike would be aboard a Mitsubishi G4M, two Bettys with 0 escorts, crossing water they believed to be safe. The interceptors were P-38 Lightnings loaded with external tanks for the long haul, crews tuned to the minute hand. Hundreds of miles later, with salt spray streaking canopies and timing as tight as a watch spring, they look up. And there the formation is, exactly where math said it would be. The leader turns toward the bombers. The Betty carrying the admiral is clean and sleek and fast, the very definition of range first. But the moment tracers stitch the wing roots, the promise of that design flips. The wing is not a shield. It's a reservoir. Fuel atomizes into mist. A handful of hits do what 1,000 words cannot. Fire blooms, control dies, and jungle rises to meet falling aluminum. In a single engagement, intelligence, timing, and a design trade-off converge. The same features that made the Betty a terror on day one make it fragile on the day that ends a legend. Hold that in your mind. The G4M could carry a man across oceans. It just couldn't carry him through gunfire. That is the heart of Mitsubishi G4M Betty, the bomber built to burn. Now imagine another scene. Later in the war, a line of Bettys takes off, each one lugging a rocket-powered Ohka slung beneath its belly, a piloted warhead meant to dash at ships after release. The plan depends on getting within roughly 20 kilometers of American vessels, but hanging a rocket under a bomber turns a vulnerable machine into an anvil with wings. More drag, more weight, less speed, less climb. American radar watches them approach. Carrier fighters lift like a trap springing shut. What follows isn't a dogfight. It's arithmetic. The Betty cannot jink hard with an Ohka attached. It cannot dive away and live. The same unprotected tanks sit in the same place, and the same physics award the same outcome, one after another. Bombers ignite and fall. Many carriers ignite and fall before release. Others do reach release. At Okinawa, an Ohka sank USS Maynard L. Able, April 12, 1945, and damaged USS Shea and USS Stanley. The weapon never gets a chance to be terrifying because the carrier is. The G4M's great gift, range, is now a long, straight hallway it must run down while others wait with the lights on. I want to zoom out, because it's easy to blame crews or tactics when a machine keeps dying. But this story is really about the first choice made on the drawing board, when Mitsubishi's team in the late 1930s added kilograms to the protection column. The range column shrank. When they subtracted protection, the range grew. In an empire held together by ocean lanes, range looked like oxygen. So they strapped extra tanks into the thickest part of the wing where structure could bear it, skipped rubber, skipped armor, skipped plumbing that chokes fire, and hit the spec no one else could match. Early war conditions rewarded that courage. Thin fighter screens, sparse radar, surprise on your side. The G4M looked like genius because the world around it allowed genius to survive. But wars stretch time. Time invites counters. Radar nets thicken, fighters multiply, training improves, and the airplane that could skate 1,000 miles unchallenged suddenly has to punch through 10 miles of defended sky. In those 10 miles, the bet you made back at the drafting table gets called when Allied technical teams opened captured G4Ms, first in New Guinea, and later that pristine bird at Clark. They found the same story in every panel. Wing tanks lined 2 by 2 along the span near the root. No rubber, no armor, no inert gas purge. The weight saved by skipping those systems? On the order of hundreds of kilograms. Fuel enough to stretch combat radius by meaningful chunks. The cost when hit? A critical single point of failure. Penetrate a tank, and the airplane rarely becomes damaged but flyable. It becomes a flare. By the way, tell me in the comments, if you're the engineer in 1937 and your Navy hands you those range requirements, do you make the same call? Or do you push back and accept a bomber that can't reach the map's edges? There's no wrong answer, only trade-offs. I want to hear yours. Japan did try to bandage the problem. In 1943, production lines began laying rubber sheets under the wing skin in the tank areas. It helped against pinpricks, and it cost a bit of speed and a few hundred kilometers of range. But cannon shells and incendiary hits didn't care. Vapor still ignited. Wing fires still ran fast. Crews still didn't get second chances. A more serious fix arrived even later, what we now call the Model 3, with true self-sealing tanks, the kind of layered rubber that swells when fuel touches it, clogging holes. In tests that mattered, it worked. But the cure came with the very fever the Navy had feared at the start. Less fuel, less range. And in 1944, range couldn't buy safety anymore. Hunters were waiting everywhere. Numbers tell the scale of the bet. Early G4MS carried around 4,780 liters in the Model 1 and even more in the Model 2. Empty weights were astonishingly low for a bomber that size, which is why they could go so far and so fast for so long. Late-war self-sealing installations shaved liters to make room for rubber and structure, and range tumbled more than 2,000 kilometers compared to those first long-legged birds, depending on loadout. Only a handful of the improved variant rolled out before the end, but statistics don't capture what it meant to sit in one. Picture the cockpit at night. The crew breathes through felt masks. The ocean is a black sheet. The airframe thrums. With that clean, efficient twin radial song, you're proud, because this airplane can do what others can't. You also know the truth, because your squadron's roster is thinning. If you're intercepted, you will not be nursing a wounded bird home. You will be a brief, brilliant light. And yet the story does not end with a fireball. In August 1945, after the Emperor's broadcast, 2 white-painted Bettys with green crosses lift off for a final, strange mission. They carry no bombs. They carry no gunners. They carry a delegation to talk terms. American fighters meet them and shepherd them like nervous angels all the way. On that day, the shape that had once symbolized reach and shock becomes a courier of surrender, an airplane built to outrun the world, reduced to flying toward an ending no one could outrun. Production figures sketch the arc behind those images. Mitsubishi turned out on the order of 2,400 G4MS across versions. Many were lost in combat. The few that lived to peacetime did so because they were never asked to do the job they were built for at the hour the enemy was ready. The attrition wasn't a surprise by 1943. It was a process. Range had gotten the Navy the reach it needed. Survivability withheld the future the crews deserved. Let me put it plainly, because Built to Burn isn't just a catchy title. It is the central thesis of this machine. The G4M wasn't bad. It was expertly optimized for a war that didn't happen the way its authors imagined, designed for a fast, decisive campaign under thin opposition. It ran headlong into a slow, grinding war under dense opposition, the very feature that made it terrifying. Those deep, unarmored fuel lakes became the fuse that lit it. And here's a small but telling detail you'll love if you're into engineering psychology. In air forces that prized crew survival, crews became the investment and airplanes the consumable. You armor your asset. In forces that prized striking first and far, the mission becomes the investment and crews the consumable. You optimize the vector. 2 worldviews, 2 supply chains, 2 kinds of memorials. If that sounds harsh, it's because war is, but judgment after the fact is too easy. At the moment of design, Japan faced distances no one else did and gambled accordingly. For a season, the gamble paid. Then the bill arrived. In a moment, I want to take you inside the wing itself. How tanks are baffled. How fuel sloshes under load. How a tiny hole becomes a torch when airflow shears vapor into a mist of flame. I'll show you why a 2mm skin can feel like a steel wall on the ground and like rice paper under fire. And I'll walk you through a pilot's decision tree in a Betty under attack. Hold formation versus brake, jink versus dive, throttle versus mixture, and why none of those choices mattered once the first orange spark appeared at the root. Then we'll answer the question you've been waiting for. If the G4M had been born with self-sealing tanks from day one, would the Pacific Air War's early chapters read differently? Or would the same story unfold with a slightly different tempo? Drop your prediction in the comments right now. Then come with me into the wing. The center section is the thickest slice of the airfoil, where lift is richest and structure is strongest. Engineers love this real estate. Spars run like the bones of a bird. Ribs carve air into shape. In the Betty, that same prime property houses what the airplane lives on. Fuel, not in rubber. Ladders, not behind armor. In rigid, thin-walled aluminum compartments. Baffled to tame slosh. Plumbed to feed both engines. And vented so expanding vapor has somewhere to go. Now imagine a fighter's burst cutting across your path from low and side angles. A tracer or cannon round hits the wing root just aft of the nacelle. Aluminum ruptures with a tidy, deceptive hole. Inside, pressure and airflow shear liquid into a mist finer than rain. The slipstream sucks that mist into the wing cavity, over hot metal, under a spar, and past exhaust tracers that are literally made to burn bright. What does a mist mixed with air become? An engine's favorite mixture, just not inside a wing. Ignition doesn't look like a candle. It looks like a flashbulb, the skin oil cans, the rib bay's whistle. And before your brain can process fire, the whole inner wing is a torch. Self-sealing tanks are the opposite story told in rubber. Layers. Think of it like a sandwich. Outer vulcanized skin, inner plies of raw gum. When a bullet punches through and fuel touches that raw layer, it swells, choking the hole. You still leak, but the leak tries to die. Add proper venting, firewalls, and sometimes inert gas purging in more advanced systems. And you turn a slaughter into a survivable scare. You lose speed and range because rubber and plumbing weigh a lot. You gain minutes. And minutes are the only currency that buys a landing strip. The Betty's designers didn't forget that. They chose against it. Picture a Betty crew when those choices get tested. Pilot and co-pilot up front. Navigator/bombardier crouched with maps and drift meter radio. Operator behind hunched over green glow. Gunners watching arcs through framed panes. The tail man with his sting. Beam gunners at windows. Sometimes a dorsal position looking for dots in the sun. Defensive firepower isn't trivial. There's sting in the tail and bite on the beams. But you're not a fortress. You're a rapier. You were built to reach and strike, not to take a storm of metal and shrug. You feel the formation tighten when a lookout calls. Fighters, high 2 o'clock, doctrine says hold. Formation, overlapping fields of fire are your shield. The pilot peels a hair off throttle, the co-pilot trims, and the nose steadies. The enemy commits. Now the decision tree compresses to muscle memory. Turn into the attack to force overshoot. Keep the wing roots out of the line of fire. Present the tail sting at the last instant. Then roll level to keep the bomb load. Or torpedo run, stable. Every choice has a counter choice waiting in the enemy's cockpit. If your opponent is average, you might live. If he's been fighting over this island for months, he already knows where the fuel sits. And yet, this is important. Betty crews weren't victims. They were professionals inside a machine that did exactly what its blueprint promised. They took off because the mission demanded it. They succeeded when the conditions matched the design. They suffered when the war moved the goalposts. Let's rewind to engineering one more time and connect 3 simple truths that decide the arc of this story. Truth 1. Distance in the Pacific is not a statistic. It's a weapon. Base A to target B might be 600 miles over blue water, then 600 miles home. Put that on a bomber that tops out under 450 kilometers per hour. Add a combat turn, add weather, add reserve, and you quickly learn why range first looked like sanity. Truth 2. Survivability is also a weapon, one that compounds. Crews who live become crews who learn, and crews who learn right doctrine that kills less and saves more. Self-sealing tanks, armor, glass, and firewalls are tuition. You pay once, then collect interest for the rest of the war. Truth 3. You rarely get both for free. In 1937, the materials and engines on the shelf forced a choice. Mitsubishi chose to pay in survivability to cash out range. Now, what if they hadn't? Let's run the counterfactual delicately, because simplifications can lie. Suppose from day one the G4M flew with real self-sealing tanks and serious protection. Empty weight climbs by hundreds of kilograms. To keep total weight the same, you either carry less fuel or lighter payload. To keep payload the same, you carry less fuel, or you accept a heavier airplane and lose performance. In any branch, your radius shrinks, on the order of hundreds of kilometers to more than 1,000 in worst cases. Suddenly, some of the early war stunners wobble. Strikes from very distant bases? You need forward airfields or staging, which exposes assets to counterattack. Those perfect opening blows in late 41 and early 42 might still land, but not from the same safe distance, not as often, and with more dependence on weather and luck. On the other hand, mid-war survivability improves. Guadalcanal's attrition doesn't lighten to a breeze, but it stops being a hurricane. Instead of untouched or gone, you get shot up but limped home, and smoking landing, and crew walks away. Loss. Curves flatten, training stays in squadrons. Experience compounds. The bomber's legend changes shape. Less ghostly reach, more stubborn endurance. Would that have changed the war's result? With Allied industry climbing like a rocket? Probably not. Would it have changed lives? Absolutely. Tell me in the comments where you land. Would you trade that early reach to save those later crews, knowing the opening gambits might have hit softer? Back to the real timeline. After Buna, Allied tech teams were hungry for a clean specimen. The intact find at Clark is a once-in-a-war gift, an operational G4M sitting in sunlight with panels that actually open and systems that actually work. The notebooks fill with measurements. Empty weight roughly mid-6-ton range, max takeoff. Around 9, 5, 8 tanks in 4 groups along the inner wings. Fuel plumbing that prioritizes simplicity and weight over damage tolerance. Defensive armament placements that make aerodynamic sense but offer no armored cocoons around crew. There is a moment in every teardown when the evidence stops being surprising and starts being consistent. That shift happens fast at Clark. What the pilot said matches what the medal says. The war stories aren't legend. They're a cross-section. Here's where we fold in tactics. Because machines matter most when doctrine knows how to use them or break them. Early war Japanese doctrine leverages height, formation discipline, and timing. Bombers arrive beyond AAA reach, drop clean, and leave before a scrambling enemy can get airborne. Fighters sweep the field at treetop altitude to keep survivors down. It's coldly elegant. The Betty is the perfect partner in this dance. High, fast for its class, and long-legged enough to choose when to appear. By mid-war, Allied doctrine flips the stage lighting. Radar paints incoming raids early. Controllers vector fighters to altitudes and headings that ambush the bomber stream where it must pass. Over water near island flanks, or on the approach where terrain corrals options. Intercepts focus not on the nose or tail, but deliberately on those inner wings. A few squadrons, even brief, aim small, hit the roots. The difference between an attack that pierces the nose and one that pierces a tank is the difference between a scar and a funeral. Let's talk defensive gunnery and the Betty's sting. The tail cannon on the G4M has reach. A good tail gunner can make a head-on attacker think twice about a straight-line approach from 6. Beam guns chew at deflection shots. A dorsal position can swat a sloppy high-side run. But fighter guns are getting heavier, attack speeds faster, and angles steeper. Against a fortress or liberator, incoming fighters often need multiple passes or concentrated attacks to saw through armored boxes wrapped around engines and fuel. Against a Betty, a single well-placed burst has a different, harsher probability curve, and still, the G4M keeps accomplishing missions, especially at night, at low level, or where fighter cover is thin. Range is a form of time travel. You can be places when defenders aren't ready and vanish before they can respond. The Betty's legend persists wherever the clock is on its side. Now, let's take that pilot decision tree I promised and walk it in slow motion, because survival. Inside a Betty under attack is a choreography of tiny margins. You're cruising in formation. The navigator whispers a time to turn. The radio operator listens for word of fighters. A glint blooms high. You don't panic. You compress, pilot, small throttle to keep station, co-pilot, trim, eye scanning, beam gunner, calls bearing and height, tail gunner, checks arc. As the attackers roll in, the pilot has 3 bad options and 1 narrow good one. Bad option 1. Break hard out of formation. You rob your gunners of overlapping fields and expose your inner wing. Bad option 2. Hold dead straight. You gift a firing solution measured with a ruler. Bad option 3. Dive away steeply. It buys speed, but it feeds airflow into a wounded wing if you're hit. The narrow good one? A disciplined nose-toward maneuver that forces a steep deflection shot and flashes the smallest possible target area. Then a crisp rollback to station, so the next man has your guns beside him. It's flying like a metronome while someone throws rocks at it. If you take hits and live the first pass, the next decisions are all about airflow and fire, fuel shut-off levers for the hit side, mixture and prop to windmill the healthy engine less. Nose down enough to increase speed so flames trail behind. Not billow forward. Too much and you feed the blaze. Too little and you wrap yourself in it. If you see orange at the root, the odds collapse unless the leak stops. In a self-sealing world, this is where rubber swells and buys 30 seconds, then a minute, then maybe long enough to find a strip. In the Betty's world, this is where the wing becomes a verdict. I want to put a human face on this without breaking your heart. Survivors who flew dozens of missions weren't mystical outliers. They were crews whose flights fit the airplane, smart routes, good weather, slim opposition, tight discipline, and a statistical sliver of luck. Those men loved the G4M's feel in the air. They praised its range like a gift. Some even called it beautiful. And then they'd lower their voices and say the thing you now understand. If you're hit in the wrong place, you don't get to be brave. It decides for you. Now, draw a line from cockpit to consequence. Wars are decided by logistics and learning. The side that protects crews builds a bank of experience that grows interest. The side that spins crews for effect gets early wins, then pays compound losses. The G4M sits right on that fulcrum. It shows how a brilliant weapon for week 1 can become a liability in year 2. Not because it changed, but because the world around it did. So here's our next big question, and I want your take in the comments before I answer it. If the Betty's vulnerability was that obvious in 1943, why keep flying it on? Daylight missions at all? Why not pivot fully to night ops, skip the escorted daylight runs, and reserve those long legs strictly for the hours and altitudes where interception is hardest? In a minute, we'll explore the answers that commanders faced, pressure to attack, limited alternatives, doctrine inertia, and the complex truth that sometimes you fly a mission not because it's wise, but because losing the initiative is worse. We'll also step through one last engineering thread you've been waiting for: how a seemingly tiny design detail, tank venting and surge, can turn a survivable small caliber leak into a fatal fireball, and how late war patches couldn't unwind a blueprint decision made 8 years earlier. And then we'll come to the payoff. The lesson the Betty teaches about design ethics, about when to say no to a requirement that wins today and loses tomorrow. Stay with me. Commanders did not wake up one morning and decide to donate crews to the sun. They were trapped by competing truths. Torpedoes against moving ships demanded eyes-on runs. Level bombing against point targets wanted light and contrast. Navigation over featureless ocean, without a thick lattice of radio beacons and precision aids, was hard enough at noon. Harder still at night or through weather. And doctrine, always slower to evolve than courage, still preached formation discipline, altitude, timing, and shock. There were night raids, of course. Betty slipped in low over black water, using that long range to appear where defenders least expected. They hit anchors of supply, airstrips, and harbors by starlight, and sometimes the sky favored them. But radar grew sharp teeth. Searchlights learned to hunt with ears. Night fighters rose with AI sets that could see what human eyes could not. The window where darkness protected you narrowed month by month. Meanwhile, the missions that mattered, fleet support, timed strikes, coordinated offensives, still wanted daylight. Sometimes you fly because the clock demands it, not because the odds approve. Now, the tiny detail that sets fires you can't put out. Venting, fuel tanks breathe. As temperature changes and fuel is burned, pressure must equalize. On the G4M, Vent lines let vapor out to the airstream. In normal flight, it's safe enough. In combat, a puncture creates a different environment. Pressure pulses from airflow and maneuvers shove fuel toward the damage. Baffles slow the rush, but can't stop it. Vapor spills into the wing cavity where hot metal, arcing, rounds, or a glowing fragment can become a match. Without a swelling rubber layer to choke the wound, the leak keeps feeding. Without inert gas to blanket the vapor, oxygen keeps partnering in the crime. Add speed, and you don't blow the fire out. You fan it. Late war patches could not repeal early war physics. Rubber sheet under skin slowed pinpricks, but vapor still found oxygen and heat. The true self-sealing installations on the Model 3 worked better, but demanded space and weight to make. Room for protective layers, fuel volume dropped. Range, the very thing the Navy needed to stitch an ocean together, shrank. And by the time those airplanes rolled out, the Allies had more planes, more pilots, more radar, and more places to put them than range alone could solve. So why didn't Japan simply switch to a different bomber? Because there wasn't a spare miracle waiting in a hangar. Industrial capacity was already stretched. Fighters for home defense, replacements for attrition, engines, spares, the whole orchestra of wartime logistics. The Betty was what the Navy had in numbers, with crews trained to use it. Pivoting platforms in midstream is a luxury won by factories. Japan was running out of both time and tools. Let's walk the commander's problem the way a staff table might see it on a hard morning. Option A. Daylight strike. Pros: accuracy, coordination, shock. Cons: interception and losses. Option B. Night strike. Pros: lower interception probability. Cons: navigation error, lower hit probability, heavy dependence on luck and weather. Option C. No strike. Pros: no losses today. Cons: initiative surrenders, enemy freedom of action grows, strategic position erodes. In 1942, A works often. In 1943, A becomes a coin toss with flames on the tails. In 1944, A is a bill you can't pay. B buys you sporadic success, but not enough to hold a front together. C is the slow death that looks wise for a day and fatal by the month. So the staff keeps choosing A and B in rotation, hoping conditions swing back. They don't. Now, let's drill one more level into the anatomy of a Betty fire, because understanding this makes the whole story click. A single 12.7 round or 20 millimeters cannon shell clips the inner wing. The entry hole is tidy. The exit may be ragged. Inside, the shock wave breaks fuel into droplets. Airflow through the wing root is fast and chaotic. High pressure stagnation at the leading edge, lower pressure over the top surface, pressure gradients near spars and ribs. The result is a spray path from tank to cavity to trailing edge. If the projectile carried an incendiary mix, you get an ignition kernel wired into the wound. If not, friction-heated fragments. Or engine exhaust in the slipstream can provide the spark. Once flame exists inside the structure, heat climbs, the aluminum softens, rivets begin to lose their grip, and panels bow. Flames find the vent path and draw harder. In seconds, you're past handheld extinguishers and in the realm where only deprivation of fuel or oxygen can end the burn. The G4M, by design, offers neither. If you're flying it, you still fight. Fuel shut off to the wounded side, boost on the healthy engine, pitch to trade. A little altitude for speed while trying to trail the fire back, not suck it forward. You radio the formation. You lighten the airplane if you can. You look for water or a strip. Crew calls Titan. The tail gunner watches for enemy finishing passes. The navigator's hand doesn't shake because he's still doing math. And sometimes, yes, crews made it. Not because the airplane changed its mind, but because the leak didn't find enough oxygen. The spark never found the vapor, or a miracle of airflow. Starve the flames. Across the lines, Allied pilots learned the opposite math. Don't waste ammunition on random hits. Aim at the roots. Roll in from high quarter. Keep the pass fast to avoid defensive cones. If you see a flash, don't stick around to admire your work. Climb and set up the next. The tactic turned the Betty's greatest feature, those generous inner wings, into a target the size of a barn. And yet, credit where it's due. The G4M was a joy to fly when the sky belonged to it. Crews praised its handling, its clean lines, the way it swallowed distance like a long-distance runner. It is entirely possible to hold two truths: that it was brilliantly optimized for its brief moment, and that the cost of that optimization was ruinous when the world changed. Tell me in the comments, have you seen other machines in other wars or even in peacetime industries that were perfect for yesterday and perilous for today? Drop your example and what this self-sealing tank equivalent would have been for them. We're closing in on the payoff now, the lesson that reaches beyond rivets and rubber. In the final stretch, we'll connect the Betty's blueprint to design ethics, to how teams should argue with requirements, and to when leaders must protect tomorrow from the temptations of a perfect today. We'll also return to that white-painted final flight, the moment an airplane built for shock became a courier of surrender. And we'll leave you with a question only you can answer. What would you have built if you were asked to knit an empire across an ocean with 1930s materials and a future you couldn't see? Stay with me for the conclusion. Here's the part where Mitsubishi G4M Betty, the bomber built to burn, stops being just a war story and becomes a blueprint for every hard choice a designer, commander, or leader will ever face. When a requirement promises dazzling results if, and only if, you ignore the cost, you are staring at a trap with brass polish. In 1937, the range spec glittered. It offered decisive reach, strategic flexibility, and the illusion of safety through distance. The cost, crew survivability, wasn't just a line item. It was the future, because the future is written by people who come home and fly again. Design ethics starts with one question: what are you willing to trade for a spectacular first impression? The G4M answered: protection, fire resilience, margin. It bet that wars end quickly and opponents stay weak. The Pacific answered: no. Good design asks ugly questions early. Who pays when this goes wrong? What happens after month 6? What does the enemy learn by watching us? If the honest answers make you wince, that's the sound of wisdom knocking. The Betty's lesson is not never take risks. It's never hide the bill. Now, come back to that runway at Clark 1 last time. The intact wing panels. The empty places where rubber should be. The elegant plumbing that feeds fuel like arteries feeding a runner's heart. It is beautiful in the way fast things are beautiful. It is also honest about the choice it made. You can see the truth in every rivet, speed, and reach. First, survival, later, and then picture the final flight. White paint, green crosses, weapons stripped, seats filled with men carrying papers instead of bombs. Two Bettys moving through a sky that no longer belongs to them, guarded by fighters from the other side. If airplanes have body language, these carry themselves like messengers at a funeral. Important, solemn, necessary. The bomber built to outrun the world is now flying toward an ending it cannot change. There is grace in that image, and a warning: reach without resilience runs out of road. So what do we take with us? First, that performance numbers can lie by telling the truth too loudly. Range, speed, payload, they matter, but survivability multiplies all of them by time. Protect crews, and you keep your teachers. Keep your teachers, and you write doctrine the enemy has to solve. Second, that the enemy gets a vote. The Betty was unbeatable until it wasn't. Radar, fighters, training, and tactics rewrote the rules faster than a blueprint could catch up. If your advantage depends on the world standing still, it won't. Third, that courage isn't a substitute for margin. G4M crews were brave. They flew long black oceans and daylight attack. Again and again, bravery can win a day. Margin, the kind you build with rubber, armor, firewalls, wins a year. Finally, that saying no to a brilliant requirement can be the most professional word a designer ever speaks. If a spec demands a miracle and pays for it with lives you can't replace, your job isn't to nod. It's to argue, to model, to show the curve where early victories become late disasters. Leaders don't just buy capabilities, they buy consequences. Mitsubishi G4M Betty, the bomber built to burn, isn't an insult. It's a thesis. The airplane did exactly what it was designed to do: carry war farther and faster than anyone thought possible. The tragedy is that it also did something no one wrote on the spec sheet. It burned when history asked it to endure. So I'll leave you with 3 questions, and I want your answers in the comments. If you were on that 1937 team, holding the Navy's range demands in one hand and the math of protection in the other, where would you draw the line? If you were a commander in 1943, watching losses climb, would you pull the Betty from daylight entirely, or gamble on the few missions that promised outsized impact? Tell me why. And in your world, your industry, your life, what's this self-sealing tank you should add today, even if it slows you down, because tomorrow will punish you if you don't? If this deep dive gave you a new lens on World War II aviation or on decision-making itself, hit like, share it with a friend who loves history, and subscribe for more no-nonsense stories that put engineering and strategy under the same light. Ring the bell so you don't miss the next episode, and drop your take below. Was the Betty brilliance a fatal miscalculation, or both? Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay kind, and I'll see you in the next one.